horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, back with another review. And the time has come for the second of the three extreme films that I've mentioned for the past few videos to come in, has finally come in. And this is another one of those movies that I mentioned where, back when I first started making a list of extreme films to check out about 10 years ago, there's still some on that list because they're very hard to find or they've become out of print and very expensive. Like Philosophy of a Knife, which I recently reviewed. Well, this is another one from that original list that I made about 10 years ago. And oddly enough, this always happens. A movie that I look for a very long time and then finally just break down and buy like a DVD-R or some super cheap version, then I find an actual version somewhere that's fairly affordable. And that happened with this. I ended up buying just a bootleg DVD-R. I gave up. Again, I looked for 10 years. And then the day this comes in, which is today, I find several copies online. So I ended up buying a legit release, so that's coming in. But I was able to watch it, and I wanted to do a review. And this is another film that I've seen, maybe not top, but has been on many people's top, most extreme, disturbing, shocking lists. It is a film from 2000, and that is Subconscious Cruelty, which for some reason I always thought it was a German film, but it's actually a Canadian film. And it's known for, even though it came out in 2000, it took 6 to 6.5 years to make. So they started it in like 93, 94, when the director, Kareem Hussein, was only 19 years old. And the producer, Mitch Davis, I believe his name was only 22. And for a while, those two were all that each other had to make this movie. It stars a bunch of people that I don't think really went on to do anything else. Bray Asher, Ivalo Funev, Eric Pettigrew, Martin Vial. The cinematography, which is absolutely gorgeous, was done by Francois Bourdon. And the score, which was fantastic as well, Teruhiko Suzuki. And it was made for 100,000 Canadian dollars, which I don't know what that translates to for American dollars, but it looks fantastic. This is a beautiful looking film. Now, right off the bat, first, almost everywhere I look, it says that this is 92 minutes. But this, in every release I find, is only 80 minutes, and that says uncut, uncensored. Apparently, there was a release put out through, I can't remember the name of it. Ironically, it's the one I just bought. But, Shizuka or something like that. They had a 92-minute cut, but then that company ended up going down. So the only way you'll ever get the 92-minute cut is, I guess, if someone puts it on eBay or something. But most widely available is the 80-minute version. I guess it's still uncut, so I'm not sure what that extra 12 minutes is. I have a feeling it's just the introduction by the director, but I could be wrong. But in any case, this is an experimental avant-garde anthology. Now, I've done some extreme films that were considered artsy or art housey, like Angel's Melancholy or even Cannibal, or films by Lars von Trier. This is more like a Begotten, which is a film I absolutely love, or maybe even more like a Salvador Dali film from the 20s. It's comprised of 4 unrelated segments, even though there are similar themes throughout some of them. And each one is pretty much like a dream state. There's not really any linear tissue throughout any of them. it does feel like a nightmare. And I think kind of the overall theme or the thing that sets this movie up is, well, one, it, the opening segment or text says something about the left brain and the right brain, and how I think it's the right brain is your imagination, your creativity, stuff like that. The brain, the left brain is the clinical side to it, the logic, the reasoning, and how you must destroy the left side of your brain. That's the opening, and then we just get a short segment of a naked woman laying on a table, slit in her abdomen, a hand goes in, pulls out an eyeball. I guess just to kind of symbolize the whole, this is going to be imaginative. You can't go into this clinically or logically. It's going to be, I guess, imaginative. But that's the first segment called Ovary Eyeball, I think. But what really had me worried was even before that, there's a black and white piece just around a city with this voiceover talking about how cinema is a release or an escape or can provide some sort of solace or happiness, but not this film. This is a different film. And I started to get really worried because I really appreciate that there's no dialogue in this film as far as characters. There is voiceover narration, but with that, and then the second segment called Human Larva, all the voiceover, it reminded me of Angel's Melancholy with just its pseudo-intellectual, really trying to be darkly poetic and poignant and a transcendental. It just comes across as try-hard or edgy, which I do believe in the actual release that has the introduction. The director Hussein said, hey, I made this when I was 19. Very edgy, very, angry. Which, this movie has a very angry feel to it. This feels very disdainful, very, mad and contentious towards whatever sort of a metaphor is trying to say, like, creationism, environmentalism, a religion as a whole. Just, it has this very angry, nihilistic feel towards it. Which Hussein did also say, I did read a interview with him where, where he was in life, as with the producer Mitch Davis, they were at a very dark, dark place in their life, to the point where making this movie was the only reason to get out of bed in the morning. They kind of looked at it as like a suicide pact, or like a way to live, or a reason to live. And that shows. That really shows that all the darkness and hatred they had in their life at the time, which there's also a lot of nihilism in this as well. It really shows. But I totally commend the director, because he did say, even though it took 6 to 6.5 years to make due to a budgetary issues, it even got seized at the Canadian border at one point. What really shows the drive and commitment and the passion for this project is, he said, collectively, it took about 50 to 60 days to shoot. That 50 to 60 days was just spread over 6 years. So that's incredible. That's, wow. So yeah, with that voiceover and narration, I was thinking, oh, it's another Angel's Melancholy. It's this pseudo-intellectual, self-indulgent, poignant, try-hard, edgy, trying to be poetic, where at times it doesn't always feel that way. Sometimes it feels very straightforward, One thing I didn't know, some people have said, is that the audio kind of goes back and forth. Like, it's not just a surround sound. It kind of goes, like people with headphones, it'll go back and forth for disorientation. I thought that was really cool. But it actually, throughout the whole film, it does kind of have this try-hard, angry feel towards it. But what really got me was the voiceover narration, which is really just the first segment, or technically the second segment, a human larva. The rest is pretty much very visual, and even with that segment, it is still very much a visual story. And one thing I noticed is with a lot of these lower budget films, the voiceover narration or even just regular dialogue is usually the same volume as the score or the sound effects. So it becomes very hard to hear, especially where this narrator is just so dry and solemn, almost to the point of just a mumbling. It was very hard to hear, but I was able to pick up some stuff. But before I go more into the plot or plots, this movie is absolutely gorgeously shot. Now, other than the third story, which is called Rebirth, which is just outside, kind of in the sun, the rest has this very 70s Italian feel to it. I mean, there's lots of reds, blues, greens as far as lights. Even scenes like with someone laying in a bed in the foreground, someone crouching in the corner in the background, shrouded in red light, shrouded in blue light. It looks absolutely gorgeous. There's even a scene of a model. Like, it's not supposed to look like a miniature, as if to show this is our setting. It looks like a model. Just this dilapidated house with a rotten, land around it, with dead fish laying around. Throughout the first, actually, the human larva and the final segment has some recurring images of fish, which the director had said that humans are kind of like fish, just sort of a conforming organism that's kind of a clone of everyone else. But also the idea that babies kind of look like fish, especially when they first come out. So there is a recurring image of fish. But that very first one, the ovary eyeball with the woman on the slab, the way it's all black around her, just the light on her as she lays on the slab with all this fog, that was such like a Mario Bava shot. If I didn't know anything about this film, I would have thought it was like an early 70s Italian film. It looked so much like an old Italian film, and I loved it. It was shot on 16mm, so it does give it that very older, more vintage, low-budget feel, which I'm a huge sucker for. I love that. There are parts that are in black and white, but there is a lot of... And it reminded me of Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, with even having multiple color palettes in the same scene. But the lighting and the cinematography, absolutely gorgeous. And that's one thing that does help with kind of the try-hard edginess to the film. It kind of what helps keep it from being laughable is it looks very beautifully made. It does kind of have a film student look and feel to it, but yeah, Angel's Melancholy was well shot, but that still just looked like a movie. This is like an art project, and just what they were able to do with so little is it's beautiful to look at. It's outstanding to look at. And I think Mitch Davis did say, even the cheapest movie can look expensive depending on how you light it. So even if some of the messages and the metaphors seem kind of edgy and try hard and all of that, the cinematography and the lighting is absolutely remarkable. And the score. The score is all over the place. Each story has its own feel. The first two did sound like they could be in a 70s Italian film. The last one has like this heavy metal riff to it that I thought really fit. So it's a very well made movie. Uh, with the technical aspects of lighting, cinematography, score, it's beautifully made. I'll even say it's well acted because the acting is all in the visuals. And at times, it does kind of feel like a silent film because they do kind of have to overact to get, to really show the emotions of the scene. Because the only dialogue that's really spoken by characters are a couple lines in the last story. Other than that, really no dialogue. So first, I'll just kind of do a run through of each plot. Then I'll say spoilers, and then I'll just say what the disturbing parts were. So yeah, we had the one with the eyeball being taken out, which I think was just kind of the, see, this is what I mean. You got to get rid of the logical side of your brain because this is what you're in for. Human larva shows this guy who, according to Hussein, is a virgin. He's in love with his sister. He watches her as she has sex with either her husband or partners, and he longs for her. Then she becomes pregnant. He becomes mad and enraged, and that's when he decides he's going to do the worst thing imaginable, which is to kill during creation. And it does go into some very sort of edgy philosophy. Like, at one point, he's masturbating while he's watching her, and he sees semen as this sort of divine substance, but menstruation is kind of a joke, because in order to create and give birth, you have a lot of suffering and sacrifice and stuff like that. And so he wants to do that, but he also wants to control his sister, so he becomes her caretaker up until it's time to give birth, and we see how he takes care of that. And then we go into the story Rebirth, which is with 6 people. I think it's 1 guy, 5 women, whatever. They're all naked in a field, smeared with mud, and they're having sex with the earth. I mean, a guy digs a hole, starts to fist it, then have sex with it. But when he does, blood comes out of the earth. This one woman, everything they do is very, very suggestive. She even walks up to like a branch, does that a bit, snaps the branch, blood comes out. Another woman has like a cat of 9 tails or something. Simulates fellatio with it until she bites it and then blood comes out. And basically, I think that is just the whole world worship where, one, there is the obvious thing of how humans rape and fuck the earth, but also even people that love the earth and want to save it, they're still destroying it somehow. So that was a bit more obvious. And then we come to the last one, which is this sort of, it's kind of like a banality of evil type story. Just this regular guy who works in an office building. He works, he goes home, watches porn, jerks off. And Hussein did mention that, the guy in Human Larva, when he looks at his semen, he's infatuated, almost with like a childlike naivete. This guy looks at it and he's grossed out because it humanizes him, because I guess he longs to be more, and he even has dreams of, extreme pain and pleasure. So he goes to bed, we get this black and white dream where like these hooks and wire goes on each side of his dick, starts pulling, and he starts, getting the skin split this way. That goes on. And this is also the religious story that involves a very horrific scene with Jesus, Probably the most sacrilegious thing I've seen involving Jesus himself. Probably the most famous scene of the movie. And then we get kind of the final scene, which I think is even on some of the DVD releases. The sort of like dual morphed face that kind of looks like the face from The Thing, but Sloth from the Goonies. Kind of to show, the attempted separation of the left and right brain, and then it ends. So, I will say, yeah, there are parts that are graphic. There are parts that they all do kind of have that try-hard feel to it. Maybe not as much as, say, something like a Serbian film. I would definitely say that's the most try-hard. But where that's try hard, just trying to be shocking and disturbing in the most extreme way possible. This, I can definitely feel the emotion behind it, even if it is just rage and angst, which the director did admit that's what fueled this film. It's definitely worth checking out, and the practical effects are very well done. I mean, yeah, the baby from the second story definitely looks rubbery. But like the scene when she's giving birth and you just see that dilated vagina with the head coming out and with just that pure red light, it's pretty gruesome. And then the whole thing, I will say the hooks and the penis, that scene, that was pretty gnarly. And then the whole thing involving Jesus. If it was a regular character, you could probably say, oh, that's nothing we haven't seen in like a Mary and Dora film. But where it is Jesus, I'm not even a religious guy. In fact, I'm an atheist. But just the idea of putting that there for people to watch, I can see why this is on people's most extreme lists or most shocking and disturbing lists. It's definitely well made. I will say this is more effective and more just kind of like, what am I watching? I'll say that it's more effective with that than, say, oh, a Serbian film, or I can't really compare it to some of the French movies like Martyrs or something, because very radically different. This is definitely in the extreme realm of, say, like a Mary and Dora film. So, I do think it's effective. I think it is. I mean, I love all art house horror films, whether it's something a bit more straightforward and metaphorical like A24 or even like a Lars von Trier film, or if it's full on experimental like Begotten or films by Gaspar Noé or whatever. I love art house films, and this might be up there with Begotten as far as just being a very effective, even though it's angsty and edgy, just teetering on laughable. Well, not really, but if it wasn't as well shot, lit, edited, set up, then it would have been laughable. But because of how well made it is up there with Begotten for me as far as just experimental, avant-garde, surreal, whatever horror films. And yeah, even the director did say that people like Jodorowsky, David Lynch, Dolly were all influences. So if you are into those extreme films, this is definitely worth checking out. If you think even A24 films are self-indulgent and pretentious, stay away from it because you're not going to like it. If extreme films are not your thing, especially if it comes to anything dealing with babies, it's not sexual like Serbian film, but it is violent. Stuff like that, or stuff with religion, stay away from it. But I waited 10 years to see it. I'm glad I finally did. I'm glad to own it. I'm glad an actual release is on its way. But yeah, so now I'm just going to go over the actual extreme parts, so spoilers. As going back to human larva, as she's given birth, I mean, yeah, we see her mangled vagina open as like the baby's head's coming out. He grabs a hold of it, slits its throat with a box cutter, which we do see, it is build up. You know, we see him coming up with a box cutter, her reaction, his reaction, box cutter. And then he just grabs it, pulls it, slits its throat, pulls it all the way out, and then holds it right in front of her face as it just squirts blood all over her. With this great red light on her and just this ominous blue light in the background. And yeah, because he wanted to make a mockery of creation. And the most depraved thing would be to kill during creation. Yeah, very... You can almost hear angry teenagers talking about it. And then he just wraps the baby up in paper, puts it in the counter. And then with the voiceover, it says he still continues to take care of his sister, clothe her, bathe her, lay with her. Said that he attempted to have sex with her, but she was so cold, stiff, and dead that it was unpleasant, and he'll never try it again. And even though it doesn't say it, I think with what I read by Hussein, who said he is a virgin, and he has nothing to, he doesn't know what it's like to be with a woman, he might never be with another woman, because this is all he has for like frame of reference, So, this might be his entire sexual experience. I pretty much talked about the rebirth one with the earth. That's, well, except for the ending where it shows this woman in like a white gown holding a knife down here, and this guy simulating fellatio on it. We just see blood, come down on it. Then that ends. So then the guy, the office building guy, after he jerks off to porn, goes to bed. We see a doppelganger come out with, he steps, he's like all black, but like his face is lit in green. And then he disappears, lit in blue, disappears, lit in red, or however the order is. Keeps going like this to say, the only dialogue in the film, we're here to destroy the left side of the brain. He does say some other stuff, but I couldn't really hear it because it's all distorted. It goes like this a few times, and then his eyes are all like gone. He looks like that, but the guy's in black and white because he's dreaming. He dreams in black and white. And here's where the religion aspect comes in, because not only do we have hooks and wire going into each side of his dick, slowly pulling the skin off, there is a woman there kind of teasing it like this. But then when all the skin comes off, that's when she just starts going at it, which I imagine would be painful. But he's wearing a cross. And his doppelganger says, you don't really believe in this. What it stands for isn't even what Jesus wanted. You're only wearing it because it's culturally acceptable or socially acceptable. It's instant acceptance and respect for people. So you don't really believe or care. That's why you wear it. So then the guy takes it, and Hussein did say that heroin was huge where he was growing up. So this is kind of, and heroin being accepted more in film at this time. But also the idea that religion is like a drug, or people use it like a drug, or addicted to it like a drug. Puts the cross on tinfoil, lights it, turns it into a liquid, takes a syringe, stabs it into his head, juices it, which I guess could be forcing religion on people, or peer pressure with drugs, peer pressuring religion. I kind of got it as forcing religion, kind of the truth. I think it's supposed to be the truth about religion, where we see a bloody Jesus as he appears in anything else, only his thorn crown now has double-sided razors all over it. He's screaming and crying in front of a church. No audio. Like, whenever someone's screaming in any of these stories, there's no audio of the screaming. It's just the music, which I thought was very cool. Then there's these three naked demon ladies that drag him, I think, into the church, where you get this David Lynchian, all black, sort of background, except for just like this beam of light where he is. Two of them are biting on his knees and eating his flesh. Another one's on top of him, kind of ripping off some flesh. They force him to eat some of it, with some images of, Jesus having the body of Christ cracker. I think it's supposed to say that we've kind of cannibalized a religion. It's this sort of bastardized, cannibalized version of what Jesus taught, told in a very edgelordy way. But yeah, then she squats over him, pisses all over Jesus, and then opens him up, takes his organs out, and then uses those to pleasure herself. And then we get an image of, I remember it's the doppelganger or someone else, but we see Jesus, fine, no blood. We just see this black glove kind of touch his face, and then whoosh, you kind of like the shot from Evil Dead with the tree. Jesus face down, and right up his ass is this giant stick, where he just screams and cries, and the stick is going like this, blood everywhere. And then we just cut back to the main guy, who has that double John Carpenter's The Thing face, I guess to show the separation of the two sides of the brain. We get a shot of a hand holding half a brain with worms all over it. A red screen and a movie. Oh, also to go along with the fish, kind of symbolism is in that second story when the baby's coming out, we get like shots of a fish face, but then after he slits the throat and pulls it out, we get up close images of a hook going into a fish's mouth. So yeah, it definitely has its extreme moments. It definitely has its graphic parts. Like I said, it does kind of feel edgelordy. It feels like an angry teenager came up with it. But, it is told in a creative way. I will give it that. I have read reviews where people have said this is uncreative garbage. Boiling down across, I don't know why I'm holding this up, this isn't across, and then, juicing someone up with it like it's a drug, and that being the metaphor, that's fairly creative. The whole movie's creative. The whole movie does feel like this surreal dream or nightmare. It really does live up to its whole idea of eliminating the logical part of your brain or thinking process and just staying with the imaginative side. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it does have, I keep repeating, the edgy, angsty, feel to it, but I definitely feel the passion behind this project. I admire the dedication and the passion behind it. I love the imagery. Some of the more subtle metaphors or themes and imagery. But what I really liked was the music, especially the cinematography and the lighting. It's a beautifully made film. Even if you take all the graphic parts out, it would still be a very interesting, interesting again. It'd be very interesting and very intriguing and beautiful to watch film. I really enjoyed it. I've been 10 years, but I'm glad I finally got to see it. So that is Subconscious Cruelty. I did not want this video to be over a half hour long, but that's what happens when you have I was going to say a deep movie. I think it thinks it's deeper than it is, and even the director now says, yeah, I made it when I was angsty and angry. But you definitely feel the anger behind this film. I feel the anger in this more than I do most other extreme films. So yeah, that is Subconscious Cruelty. I have one more extreme film that is on the way. It's on back order, so who knows when it'll get here. Uh, I was gonna order a few more from the store I go to, so maybe I'll do that. If not, I'll finish out the Monokane films, then go on to something else. But anyway, thank you for watching.